Hey everybody, I'm Kim Charlson and I'm a spirit guide channeler. Welcome to the very first episode. I'm really excited to have you here and to start this journey together because Monty and I, the spirit guide that I channel most of the time, have been really excited to get this podcast started. And we're just really delighted to welcome you to this space and to start sharing our messages that we both have. Most channelers that you may have watched, they usually channel a message and then the channeler themselves don't really offer a lot of perspective. The difference that you're going to find in our content is that the human side is just as important as the spirit side. In every single episode that I'm going to be sharing here going through into the future, you're going to start off with me and the human perspective because that makes it the most easily accessible for you as a human in physical manifestation to really understand the topic that we're going to be talking about. And then in the second half of every episode, I'm going to bring in Monty and he'll share the spirit perspective of every single episode and the topic that we're talking about. We're really excited to bring this to you. So I'm very excited to have you here. In this episode, we're going to talk about my journey with channeling, how I had a lot of self-doubt in the beginning, and how my journey through channeling and learning how to channel has got me to this point now, as well as Monty's journey, a little bit of why we work together, how we've started working together in this particular lifetime, and a welcome message from him that he has planned to really invite you into this space. My journey with channeling, it's kind of interesting, to be honest, because it's not like most channels. Most channels I have found, they decided I really want to learn how to channel because I saw somebody else do it. I think it's really awesome. I want to have this type of connection. Or they grew up in a family where channeling was just the status quo. It was something that their family did. They grew up in psychics or a mediumship family, and it's just something that they grew up around. And for me, I did not have that upbringing. My family was just not really into psychic work, and they still aren't, which is maybe a discussion for a future episode of how my family reacted to me being, a channeler and deciding to go down this route in a very public way. My journey to channeling is a little different than most because the first time that I channeled, I spontaneously channeled. It was a little bit of a journey to get there before I was just, channeling all the time, doing voice channeling like I am now. Before I really get into my journey, I quickly first want to identify what channeling is, as I'm going to be talking about it on this podcast. So channeling in its broadest definition is any time that you are bringing energy in through your physical vessel, through your body, and bringing it into physical reality. So that can be something like you're in the zone when you're creating artwork or music. That is definitely channeling. It can be something like doing energy healing, like Reiki work. That's also a form of channeling. But when I'm talking about channeling, I'm going to be specifically referring to a type of channeling that's called semi-conscious trance voice channeling. And it's a really long phrase, so I just abbreviate and call it channeling because it's easiest when we're talking about it in this podcast. What semi-conscious trance channeling is basically is I allow the spirit that I'm working with, and it's a spirit that I trust, I have a relationship with, to come into my body and be able to speak through my voice and control my movements. My consciousness is still present, and this is why it's semi-conscious. I am in a meditative state. I am still aware of what's going on, and I'm very much in control of my body, but my consciousness kind of takes like a back seat. When I am channeling, I kind of put my consciousness back here a little bit. It kind of goes off to the side. And Monty, the spirit guide that I'm going to be working with throughout this podcast, comes in and is the one that you'll hear speaking and the one that moves my body. For most people, when they see me channel for the first time, it's kind of a little odd. My voice changes a little bit. It's not like my tone of voice changes all that much. It's more the word choice, the intonation. I don't pause as much as I'm speaking. I'm much more determined in my words. I don't do just like that right there. And it flows. It flows much more easily than when I'm speaking normally in a regular conversation. You'll notice a difference. And Trance channeling basically comes in different forms. So I do the semi-conscious, which means I'm in control. I still can, kick out the spirit at any time. I know what's going on as well. So that way, sometimes I get feedback from the channeling that doesn't come through in the energy of that. There's messages of part of the message that I understand that maybe doesn't come fully through when I'm in the channeling state and Monty's speaking through me. There are other types of channeling, of trance channeling, where you are completely unconscious. There are some really famous channelers that have done that before, like Jane Roberts. She was a full trance state. So she would basically go to sleep, and then the spirit that she worked with would fully take over her body and speak through her that way. So that's kind of the spectrum of channeling. It goes all the way from you're bringing through things in just a really inspired process, maybe through writing, art, direct energy healing, that sort of stuff, all the way to the type of channeling that I do. But I just wanted to clarify throughout all of our discussions, when I'm talking about channeling, I'm talking about semi-conscious trance voice channeling specifically. My journey to becoming someone that does channeling wasn't super straightforward, and really has a lot to do with the energetic work that I decided that I needed to do first before I really found my path. So in my kind of conventional life, before I started having my spiritual transformation, I've owned a marketing agency for about 13 years now, and I've been in the marketing industry, and had gotten really burned out on it, and was getting to the point where I knew I wanted to do something else. I felt really trapped in this business. It was very successful, and I've been very fortunate that it still, provides me the sustainable lifestyle that I have, so that way I can do channeling, because channeling at this point in my life is not my full-time job. I was really looking for something else, and I was having a lot of anxiety. Trying to go to work was just anxiety inducing, spinning all the plates all the time, and didn't really have any sort of way to manage all of that. And I tried therapy, and a lot of the therapists were like, yeah, you're so self-aware of what's going on. Your life just sucks. You have way too much stress, and it just comes with running a business. Sorry, that's just the way it is. And I kept thinking, there has to be another answer. This cannot be the way it has to be, of that if you have a successful business and you've done all the structural things, there's just things that go wrong when you own a business. That can't be all there is, of just coming to that point of acceptance. So I started exploring, I did therapy first, didn't really work for me, to the point that multiple therapists after a while were like, you should really become a therapist. It would be really helpful for other people because you understand how to apply, CBT techniques and all of that. And I would apply all that stuff, and it didn't really make a huge difference for me. So a friend of mine, Alyssa Martin, who is a very skilled energy healer, had started doing energy healing for people and offered me a free session around the same time. And I was curious about it and was like, yeah, let's give it a go. Ended up being a hugely transformational experience for me. At that point, really said, I can't continue to live my life the way that I've been living it. Something needs to change. And I'm going to commit to doing this energy healing because it feels like it's working, versus therapy did not feel like it was working at all. I made a big commitment to work with Alyssa for, doing 3 energy clearings every month, and then repeating the recording pretty much every single day for an hour to an hour and a half, and working on my energy. And I did that for about a year and a half with her. And during that time span, in the periods when I would be in that meditative state with her, where she was guiding me through working on my energy, and she was facilitating doing that and working on my energy for me, I started to feel the presence of my guardian angels. I started to hear their voices and see them in my mind's eye when I was in these meditations with her. But every single time that I tried to bring them forward and say, okay, can you be present with me, when I would be doing it on my own, I couldn't sense them. And I couldn't figure out why. And I decided, okay, well, maybe this is a skill that she has. I don't have that skill. Maybe she has the gift for the chosen few, that is not something that I am capable of. So I'm not going to concern myself too much about it. I'm going to really focus on my energy and my energy healing right now. That's my priority. And I moved on. And then I started, really thinking I need to make changes in my life beyond just doing this energy healing. Stuff needs to change, but I don't know what path to take. I really don't know what to do. She advised journaling with my true infinite self, which is her term for the soul. And at that point, I would sit down and I'd write down some questions and I would tap into that energy that I would feel of what my soul, my true infinite self would feel like. And I would listen to what came through and write it down. And this type of channeling of where we're writing down what we're hearing, that's called inspirational writing. And it's not the pen was being taken over by my highest self, by my true infinite self. I was just listening and kind of writing down whatever came through. And I was fully conscious at the time and writing these things down. And the advice felt really good. And then I started applying this advice in my day to day. When it started off, it was really just confirming things I already knew, of kind of things that were there in my conscious that I knew, okay, this is probably right, but I don't want to admit that it's right. And really getting that confirmation that way kind of gave me the bravery of saying, okay, we need to make these changes. And I started making these changes. And then the answers started to change. They were things that I wasn't aware of. And over time, I started really opening up to this experience. And so that's really my first experience with channeling. As I started to do that more, my guardian angel started to show up during meditations that I was doing on my own. And I started to think, okay, that's interesting. I don't really know what to do with this, but we're moving on. Okay, I've got other things I want to focus on. And at this point, I was like, I really need to figure out something other than marketing. Marketing is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. It's good for right now. It's a good job. At that point, I'd made a lot of changes and made a lot of transitions. I got to be much more relaxed in my life. It became much more manageable, both for me and my employees. We all benefited from it. And right now, even still, I have my marketing agency still today. It is so much better than it was before because of working through my energy and working with my true infinite self, my soul, and really going through that process. But I knew that I could do something more. I knew that there was something to this energy work, and maybe I should be bringing it to more people. And thought, Alyssa's such a great energy healer. She's made such a difference in my life. Maybe I could do this for other people. And talked to her about what that was like and said, okay, I'm going to try giving away sessions for free to my friends. And up until that point, none of my friends were spiritual people. They're all very leery of the spiritual space. I remember having lunch with a friend and telling her about the experiences I was having doing energy healing around this time where I was considering becoming an energy healer, and explaining it to her. And she was like, that's nuts. Like, you're crazy. That's not real. And to this day, we still don't really talk to each other. But I couldn't, really get any of my friends to decide to try energy healing with me, to even see if, is this something that I wanted to do? And at that point, my husband, who helps me a lot with my channeling work, that if you ever attend any of our live channeling sessions, he's the moderator because I'm in a semi-conscious trance state. So he moderates, asks the questions. He was at that point where he was starting to do energy work and had some really big blocks that he was working on. And my energy healer, Alyssa, was also working with him. And she said, you can't get anybody to try this with you. Why don't you do some energy healing on him? Work some extra on these blocks. If you like working on his energy, then maybe it's for you, because his energy is definitely more prickly and more difficult than most people's of where he was in his journey at that time. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. I'm going to see if I like it, see if I like the experience, even though it's with, my husband, someone I have a very intimate relationship with. It's a good way to start when I can't get anybody else to sign up to try energy healing even for free. I was giving away these sessions and nobody wanted to take me up on them. During one session, he had this really big block that Alyssa had been working on with him that really wasn't budging. And I decided, okay, let's try it, see if we can budget. As I'm in this kind of meditative state, using my psychic skills to kind of feel into the energy, see what's going on with his energy. And I think to myself as I'm looking at this, I really wish there was someone here that could guide me through this process, because I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm doing this right or not. As I'm thinking this and in this psychic state, I start to feel this energy kind of off to the side and can feel it's this warm, kind, loving energy. And I decide, okay, I'm going to bring this energy into my body and see if I can transfer that energy into the block that we're working on to see if I can get it to move at all, get it to break up at all. Even just like a slight amount of movement would be great. I bring this energy in, and then all of a sudden I start to feel this pressure on my throat. I'm bringing in more and more of this energy, and I feel this feeling like, I don't know what this is, but it feels like this energy wants to bubble up. And next thing I really know, I start to speak, but it feels almost not quite like an out of body experience, but it feels like it's not me that's speaking. And suddenly I say like full sentences, and I don't remember what I said at this point, but say these things to my husband, and he responds and asks some questions, expresses some frustration, and the voice responds to these frustrations and has a conversation with him. And it is the oddest thing. And I'm just like, what even is this? At the end of the session, he says, this is something that's come up with a spirit guide in my meditations, because he was able to speak with his spirit guides. It was a continuation of a conversation that they had already been having. He hadn't even told me about it. So there was no way for me to know what they had talked about that then came out of my voice. I said, I think I channeled. I was aware of channeling. I don't know what to do with this. And I started buying books and trying to find resources and trying to find a teacher. It is very hard to find a channeling teacher these days. A lot of the channeling resources that are out there are from the 70s and 80s, and a lot of the channeling authorities of the teachers that we had in human form. Obviously, there's channeling teachers in non-physical form, but a lot of them have passed on. And the only way that we have their work is through books. Find a book and say, oh, this is so great. I love this teacher. And then I would go try to contact them and find out, oh, they'd passed away like 6 months ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Eventually did find some teachers to learn from, and then went through a more formal education for how to channel and really studied it. That gets me to today, where now I channel on a very consistent basis. But it was that process of spontaneously channeling and having no idea what was happening, to now really having studied it, gone through the process of learning from other teachers, and then also learning from the spirits that I'm working with of how to channel better, and really getting feedback from them on that process. Because when we channel, it is both physical and non-physical. We need to have teachers in physical and teachers in non-physical form. Even though I had this process of, I had a lot of resources and a lot of help, I've always and still do have a lot of doubt from time to time myself about the channeled messages that I bring through. I think it's really important that we do explore this, because channeled messages are not always right. Number one, because the channel themselves may not be very clear. They may not know what they're channeling. The entity, the spirit that they're channeling may not be something that's a higher source. They may also be channeling their ego. That happens quite often. Even though I was in this space and was in this educational space with people I very much trusted, I've always had a really healthy amount of self-doubt. And why I say it's healthy is because every single time I channel, I am constantly asking myself, are you actually connected? Is this really coming from something other than you? Can you sincerely feel the spirit that you are connected to and that you're channeling? Really having that self-doubt is an important part of being a clear channel and really understanding that. So I want you to understand that having that doubt is a good thing as you're watching me channel or watching other channelers, to question that. It's normal. It's healthy to do so. And it's a good idea for always have that discernment. Channeling not only changed, my marketing agency when I was channeling my soul to really make it into something that worked better for me. But then once I started working with Monty, it really started to accelerate a lot of my understanding about other things beyond just my immediate life, but a broader understanding of how the world works, of why certain things are happening in certain ways, and what I can do on my own personal level, as well as on a community aspect, to bring about the change that I want to see in the world. And I say that it's change I want to see because I think it's important that as spiritual people, we really understand it. It's our perspective that we're working on. It's really important that I'm talking about, this is the change I want to see in the world. And that's why I've made this podcast, because I really feel like there's so many channelers out there. They can be very inspiring. And especially right now, there's a lot of hype with aliens. and extraterrestrials. I think that's great. But I do think that the human side of channeling is not talked about enough. And that gets people into the place of thinking, well, channeling is only for certain people or have special skills. Not true. Anyone can learn how to channel. Not everyone should learn how to channel, but everyone can learn how to channel. There is a very distinct difference there. But I can see how channeling really helps a lot of people. It's helped me, but I can also see in my clients and my friends and in my personal relationships. I've also seen how it impacts my clients very directly in changing behaviors, changing the way they're showing up in the world, changing the way that they're processing different things. It's not just inspirational. A lot of channeled messages sometimes can be very inspiring and make us feel very good, but the most effective ones are when we bring that human aspect into it. And we really start to have that discussion of how these channel messages and the energy of them can help us change and help us live healthier, more fulfilling, more soul-aligned lives. Now I want to introduce you to Monty, the spirit guide that's going to be working with me throughout this entire series. Monty is a spirit guide that's on my team specifically, and he showed up when I started taking channeling classes. In one of the very first classes I ever took, we were asked to call in the spirit guide that was there to help us with our channeling and to be our channeling spirit that we worked with. And Monty was the one that showed up, and he has been there consistently ever since. He's also the one that I work with in all of my client session. He's also what's called a doorkeeper guide in part. So not only do I channel him and he brings through messages, he will help me to know when it's safe to bring through something else. So sometimes in client sessions, a member of the client's spirit team wants to speak directly through me to bring in a message to their human counterpart that they really want them to hear. So typically in a client session, Monty will talk to the other guides that are on the spirit team, get some messages through, some information, and then relay that through. But every once in a while, there will be a spirit guide who really wants to come through to establish a relationship through my channeling ability to the human counterpart. And so what will happen is Monty will say, hey, there's somebody else here who would like to speak. It's safe for you to do so. And this is conveyed through my psychic senses, basically. And then that spirit guide will come in. If that, they'll change places. My consciousness will stay to the side, but that's why for me, working in the semi-conscious trance state is also very important. So that way I know what energies I'm bringing in. While my energy is very open, I still have that ability to say, nope, no, thank you. And part of that relationship with Monty is that he helps me maintain those strong boundaries in my own energy. What it's like to channel Monty is that I can feel his energy and his presence in different parts of my body and how he feels, and can identify him by his energy. He has a very fluid, very watery energy that feels like almost like sunlight going through waves. And it's that pattern of light on the sand, or if you're looking up towards the source of light through water, that's what his energy feels like to me. It feels like it's very light and very fluid, but it's also very light filled. I can also feel when I'm channeling him, I get this sensation on my arms right here that I can feel like his energy here in my arms. It feels almost like a fin. I wouldn't necessarily say he's a fish, but he does have that kind of quality to him. Other guides feel differently, and that's how I can tell the difference between it's Monty versus it's a different guide. I have another guide that I work with whose name is Lisbeth. She feels like a very matronly garden, earthy mama, voluptuous in size. And I can feel when I bring her energy in, it feels more earthy. It feels like my body starts to feel a little bit more of that voluptuousness that she kind of has to her persona and her energy. When I'm channeling, I can hear what is being said, but to me, the voice that is coming out does not sound like my voice. It's a little hard to describe it. It almost sounds like to me it is someone else's voice who is speaking through me. I wasn't always that way in the beginning. He has a specific voice. Other guides have a different voice that I hear basically as they're speaking through me. I can mostly remember what I've channeled and the important parts, and sometimes have additional information, but I don't always remember all the details. Sometimes there's kind of like fuzzy blank spots, and usually I have to listen to the recording afterwards to really understand, oh, this is everything that was said. There's just a flow to it. So my job is to stay out of the way when I'm channeling. My consciousness, as I said, kind of goes back here. And my job is to keep that consciousness back here, but also remain open and in the stream. And when things come in that are channeled that are surprising, to not let my consciousness come back in and get in the way. There are times when I feel like the message is not clear and that it's not coming through clearly, or that the way that the message is coming through, or the strategy of like an analogy maybe that Monty or the other spirit being is using is not effective. Then I'll get some feedback and be like, hey guys, this isn't really working. Can we try something else? But otherwise, most of the time, my job is just to be the vessel. My job is just to be open and also to prepare the vessel. It's a lot of energetic work in the beginning before I even invite in the spirit that I'm channeling, to really make sure that my energetic envelope, it has strong boundaries, that my energy space is clear around me, that there's no other beings, that I'm really focused just on that one spirit being entity that I am working with, and that everything else is clear and I'm prepared for that. So that's what it feels like to channel for me and what that process is like. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to transition, and I'm going to cut this here to bring in Monty. The process does take me a couple minutes. So instead of having you watch me go through that process and sit in silence, I'm going to cut the video, and the very next voice that you hear will be Monty himself with his welcome message to this episode and to our new podcast together. Hello and welcome. I'm Monty, and I am so delighted to have you here with us today. I am Kimberly's spirit guide, and throughout this entire podcast, as well as any other messages that you see from us, know that we are here with you in accompaniment with your spirit team. We are delighted to share this space with you now, and know that we are sending you the energy of gratitude and love in this moment. If you are able, you may open up to this energy and feel it and receive it from us. Regardless of when you are consuming this content, it is possible because energy knows no bounds through all time and space. So we would like first to take a moment to pause so that you may feel our presence and understand that we are with you in accompaniment with your spirit team. Wonderful. Throughout this entire podcast, we will ask you to take moments of pause and ask you to perform different energetic exercises with us. The messages that we share are of the utmost importance. Our goal, rather, is for you to be able to communicate with your own soul and to understand more deeply how you can communicate with your soul's energy and bring that energy into your physical form increasingly as you listen to this podcast. Now, from our side of channeling, it is important for you to understand that it requires the willingness of the human participant. And in every instance, if you wish to learn how to communicate with your own spirit guides and your spirit team, all that is required is merely your intention and willingness to open up to the opportunity, as well as the ability to modulate and control your energy. It is of the utmost importance that you understand that you are always in control of your energy as you go forward into listening to our messages in this podcast. We will be discussing at large what it is like to be a spirit guide and how to collaborate with your spirit guides, as well as different aspects of energy that we in the spirit realm wish that humans more deeply understood, and how to begin to work with the energy of your soul. Our intention for this podcast is that you step away with a broader and deeper understanding of the things that are available to you through energetic means. The physical is limited when in comparison to the non-physical state, and it is important for you to understand this, that you can obtain anything that you desire through energetic means first and foremost, and then bring them into physical manifestation. Your intentions is how you begin to channel in any form of bringing energy from the non-physical into the physical realm. That your intention to bring in different energies through the content that you are consuming, the messages that you are hearing, to be able to bring in that energy into your physical manifestation. It is of the utmost importance that you come to terms with and accept that. And our intention going forward for all of the materials that we produce as part of this podcast is that you begin to be a master of your own energy, of your own spirit and soul in such a way that you are able to bring forth energies through your vessel into physical manifestation. Because we believe that understanding your vessel, caring for it, and learning how to use it is of the utmost importance for your ability to manifest your soul purpose, and your soul energy in this lifetime and the next. We are absolutely delighted that you are here with us today. And as we are producing the next episodes, we would like to instruct you to please ask us questions in the comments. And at the end of every episode, we will do our best to answer comments that we receive of questions that you wish to receive channeled messages on. We would be delighted to provide this connection to the other side for you as part of our work here throughout this podcast. And so we ask that at any time you send us in comments, questions, and messages as you see fit. Now, before we conclude our message today, we would like to give you a closing message from your spirit team in the collective spirits. It is important for you to understand that your willingness to listen to this podcast is part of your soul journey, but that you must use your own discernment going forward. It is important for you to understand that your energy needs to be in alignment with what you are participating in. And by participating, by listening in this podcast, your energy is participating in this. In this first episode, if you feel an intrigue of curiosity and energy moving forward, then it is a good idea for you to continue to listen to this podcast, to continue to be in energetic alignment with this space. There may be times as you are listening to this podcast that your intellect, but not your energy, is at odds with what you are hearing. This is a time for you to trust your inner voice and your intuition rather than your intellect, and ask yourself, what am I truly feeling in this moment? Is it my logical thoughts, or is it something else? If in the moments it is indeed something else, it may be that you no longer feel that your energy is in alignment with the messages that are being delivered, which means that you have received what is necessary for you to receive from the podcast, and it is time to move on in your spiritual journey. You will be with us for a certain period of time. You may be here for all of our episodes. You may be here for only some, but understand that your journey is merely part of participating in this space. Let this be a spark upon your path that guides you forward like a lighthouse of light, shining forth as a beacon to help you tread your own path forward, because it is your path built through your choices alone. Now that we have shared this of our intention and what we wish for you to do as you listen forward through this podcast going forward, we would like to send you thanks and appreciation for being here with us today. That is all. And this is what I'm like. Immediately after channeling, I kind of have this not loopy state, but you can kind of probably see my eyes don't really want to focus on anything. It takes me kind of a second or two to come back. Sometimes you may see me pulling on my earlobe like this, and that is to help my body know this is a signal to my body. It's time to bring my energy and step it back down into the physical. And it takes me a little bit sometimes to really adjust here. Monty has a couple key takeaways that he wants you to know of that. Your discernment as you're listening to this as a participant is of the utmost importance, okay? It's really important that as you're listening to these messages, if they start to feel off to you, stop listening. That's really important. He wants you to know that you're not going to do your whole spiritual journey with us. So as you're listening to this and it's piquing your curiosity, or it's helping you have those realizations that he was talking about, keep listening. But if at any time it starts to feel off to you, you want to ask, okay, is it because it's at odds with my logic? And if so, okay, what do I need to kind of reframe about my logical processes? But if it's not your logic and it just feels off, that means it's it's time to move on to participate in some other spaces because your journey with us has come to an end. And I think that's very interesting. As you're watching these first episodes, if there's something that comes up that you'd like answered, please send it to us. You can send us your questions to hello@kimcharlson.com, and that'll be down below in the show notes. But thank you so much for joining us for this first episode. I'm really excited to see where this takes us. Monty has very specific topics that he's planned out. And when we're recording them, we're going to get really into all the energy because apparently we're going to be doing some energetic exercises as part of this as well, which I find very interesting. I don't always know what Monty's going to do. And this is one of those times that I showed up, I did my part, and now he's done his. And now we're going to see where it takes us. And that's one of the funnest parts of channeling is you really have no idea what's going to happen. So thank you so much for joining us for this first episode, and we'll see you in the next one.